They told us ice cream was the safest comfort, the one guilty pleasure you didn't have to second guess. But this summer, even that illusion cracked. The FDA has confirmed recalls ripping through 16 US states, pints and bars from brands you thought you could trust. Popular ice creams, the very same cartons stacked in millions of freezers right now, are being yanked off shelves because they're carrying hidden dangers. Allergens unlisted, bacteria invisible, even fragments of plastic waiting between the swirls. If the food that symbolized safety for children and working families is suddenly a roulette wheel, then what's left that we can trust? How many more everyday desserts are ticking bombs in disguise? And if corporations can't keep the most basic treats safe, how will they ever protect the rest of our food supply? This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. Tonight we expose 7 popular ice creams pulled off shelves from 16 states across America. Let's begin. Number 1. Bluebell Crunch. What if the dessert you bought to soothe your worries was the very thing sharpening the knife against you? That's the unsettling reality for shoppers across 16 states after the FDA revealed on August 22, 2025, that Bluebell's tubs labeled chocolate chip cookie dough weren't cookie dough at all. Instead, they were packed with Millennium Crunch, a flavor laced with almonds, walnuts, and pecans, none of which appeared anywhere on the label. For the more than 5 million Americans with nut allergies, this wasn't a simple factory mistake. It was like hiding landmines under the sprinkles, waiting for someone to take a bite and pay with their breath. Picture where these tubs landed: Texas, Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Georgia, Mississippi, and 9 more states. Not upscale neighborhoods with endless options, but communities where seniors on fixed incomes and families juggling bills reach for what feels safe, cheap, and familiar. Bluebell has been marketed as a comfort, grandma's kitchen in a carton, a local brand that feels like family. But what happens when family betrays you? For someone with allergies, 1 scoop means the throat swelling shut, the chest locked tight, and a desperate race to the ER. And ask yourself, how many grandparents or tired parents will check a lid code under the harsh lights of a store when all they wanted was a treat to soften life's blows? The outrage deepens when you recall Bluebell's record. Back in 2015, their ice cream was contaminated with Listeria. That outbreak killed 3 people, hospitalized 10, and turned everyday freezer aisles into crime scenes. Their CEO at the time wasn't just criticized, he was indicted for fraud and conspiracy, accused of lying to regulators while customers unknowingly spooned danger into their mouths. Bluebell paid settlements, promised redemption, and then leaned on nostalgia to win back trust. Yet nearly a decade later, the same pattern reappears. Different hazard, same betrayal. How many more times can a company cry, oops, before it becomes clear this isn't carelessness but culture? What's worse is how fragile the so-called safeguards really are. This recall only happened because a single employee noticed the mismatch while restocking. Think about that. The protection of millions relied on 1 worker not looking away. Where were the systems, the audits, the never again reforms they promised? It feels less like corporate oversight and more like flipping a coin every time you shop. Heads, you get dessert. Tails, you gamble with your life. And isn't that the cruelest irony, that Americans already forced to sacrifice quality for price, now must also sacrifice safety for the illusion of tradition? So what do? Some shoppers might shrug, thinking, it won't happen to me. But that's the same logic that leaves us clutching ambulance bills later. Others are quietly pivoting toward brands with stricter labeling like Nick's Swedish ice cream, or experimenting with dairy-free, nut-free options like Helados avocado-based desserts. And yes, more families are pulling out the $25 home ice cream makers, blending oat milk, vanilla, and monk fruit to take control of sweetness without betrayal. It isn't just about dessert, it's about reclaiming choice from corporations that treat consumers like pawns on a profit board. And the most haunting question remains: if Bluebell's past brought Listeria and its present brings mislabeled allergens, what's next, hiding under their glossy lids? Another outbreak? Another round of lawsuits? Or something darker we can't yet name? Regulators claim they're watching, but how many funerals have to pass before watching turns into action? Are we, the shoppers, doomed to keep forgiving because the brand feels familiar, even when that familiarity is killing us? Number 2. Friendly's Vanilla. Picture the scene. You're wheeling your cart through the supermarket, the hum of old fluorescent lights above, humming a tune you haven't thought of since 1979. You stop at the frozen aisle, and there it is. Friendly's Vanilla Bean. Vanilla, the flavor that has always meant safe, like mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving or buttered toast in the morning. You grab it, check out, and carry it home, believing you've chosen the one thing in life that won't argue with you. But then, with that first scoop, you're blindsided. It isn't vanilla at all. It's cookies and cream, teeming with wheat and soy, allergens that were never listed. On August 5th, 2025, DFA Dairy Brands admitted they'd put out 324 half-gallon cartons mislabeled this way, quietly recalling them after they'd already been shipped across Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Vanilla didn't just become unreliable. It became dangerous. Think about the setup. A retiree with celiac disease, a grandmother whose lungs lock up around soy, a father with asthma that wheat can ignite, all sitting down with a bowl of harmless vanilla. Within minutes, hives, wheezing, or worse, the panicked rush to the ER. How does a brand that's literally named Friendly's serve something so treacherous? It feels less like ice cream and more like a practical joke scripted by a cruel sitcom writer. A neighborly brand turns the freezer aisle into a booby trap, and suddenly trust feels like the punchline. The real twist is where this mistake came from. Unlike Bluebell's fiasco, which at least was caught by a sharp-eyed store worker, Friendly's disaster was born on the factory floor, right in the packaging line. A lid swap here, a shrug there, and suddenly consumers are gambling their health on whether someone in quality control was paying attention. Nobody caught it. Nobody raised the alarm until an allergic consumer reported a reaction. That's not just a hiccup, it's a corporate blindfold, and every scoop could have been another hospital visit. Even worse, Friendly's won't face a trial or jail time. They're offering refunds. Imagine nearly losing your breath to soy and being handed back a couple of dollars, as if your safety was worth pocket change. And here's the cruel punch. Working-class Americans don't have the luxury of playing food detective. Seniors stretching Social Security checks. Families couponing every week. They grab brands they've trusted for decades because trust is cheaper than doubt. Who has time to play Russian roulette with cartons of ice cream in the middle of a grocery run? Nobody expects vanilla to mean roulette wheel, yet Friendly's has taught us that the flavor of comfort can now double as the taste of betrayal. So what can shoppers do? For those unwilling to risk it, brands like Halo Top at least wear their allergen disclosures like a neon sign, while 3 Twins lists every ingredient clearly, no surprises hidden under the lid. Or maybe the smartest move is stepping off the corporate carousel altogether, buying a quart of cream, a real vanilla bean, and sugar, and simmering your own vanilla fudge at home. It may sound old-fashioned, but isn't that the point? The homemade bowl doesn't gamble with soy or wheat, and it costs less in the long run than ER bills or repeat betrayals. But here's where the unease lingers. How many more Friendly cartons will stab us in the back before we realize the word on the label doesn't equal the truth inside? How long do we keep letting nostalgia blind us when even vanilla is no longer safe? And when the next recall comes, and it will, how many shoppers will shrug, hoping lightning won't strike them until it finally does? Number 3. Rich's Bars. You hear that familiar jingle of the ice cream truck rolling down the block, the kind of sound that used to mean summer was still pure and simple. You hand over a few crumpled bills for a Rich's ice cream bar, peel back the wrapper, and taste a childhood memory. But instead of sweet relief from the July heat, you might be biting straight into danger. In July 2025, Rich's recalled 110,292 cases of frozen dessert bars. Flavors like chocolate crunch cake, strawberry shortcake, orange cream, fudge frenzy, and even the neon bright cotton candy twirl, because they were contaminated with Listeria monocytogenes. That's not nostalgia in a wrapper, that's poison dressed as dessert. Think of it like a Trojan horse on a popsicle stick. You expect vanilla comfort, but inside lurks an enemy. Listeria doesn't announce itself with odd smells or strange tastes. It slips in silently, then attacks the weakest among us. The elderly, children, people with weakened immune systems, retirees already drained from juggling medical bills. Symptoms aren't gentle. Pounding headaches, high fever, confusion, stiff neck, even seizures. For seniors living on fixed incomes, a single cheap bar can turn into a $1,000 ER visit, or worse, the kind of story that never makes it into the obituaries because it sounds too absurd. Grandpa died from ice cream. And this isn't some tiny boutique recall affecting one county fair. 110,000 cases spread across 23 U.S. states, from Alabama to Wisconsin, Texas to Massachusetts, and even overseas into the Bahamas. That means grocery stores, school cafeterias, gas station freezers, and those very ice cream trucks humming down our neighborhoods. The very places working-class families lean on for small pleasures are now staging grounds for illness. It isn't just a freezer malfunction, it's a nationwide betrayal, a cold ambush on the people least able to fight back. What makes it more frightening is that unlike Bluebell's mislabeled tubs, or Friendly's careless lid swap, this isn't something you can catch with a sharp eye. No employee noticed, no parent could smell it. Listeria is invisible, tasteless, odorless. It hides until someone collapses. That's what makes it terrifying. We're told to trust the process, but the process is invisible and clearly broken. And the company's response? A recall notice, a shrug, a quiet, don't eat it. No contrition, no accountability, just a refund slip as if your safety could be reimbursed like a parking ticket. Imagine neighborhood kids grabbing those bars after school, retirees treating themselves before Social Security checks run out, families hoping for just one small joy. That cheerful truck jingle now sounds like a siren warning of danger. Each wrapper a lottery ticket where the prize might be a hospital bed. And here's the part that stings most. The very people who keep these brands alive, the low income, the seniors, the families, are always the ones hurt first and worst. So where do you turn? Some shoppers now lean on Tillamook for individual scoops with stricter batch testing, while others support local creameries where production is smaller and safety easier to track. Or maybe the safest move is back to basics. Freeze yogurt-dipped fruit on sticks, or churn small batches at home where every ingredient is under your watch. Because if corporations treat food safety like a gamble, maybe the only way out is to stop letting them roll the dice with our lives. And now comes the hard question. Why do we still allow brands to treat food safety as optional when they're distributing 100,000 contaminated bars at a time? How many more popsicles, fudge bars, or frozen treats are really just ticking time bombs dressed in pastel wrappers? And how many more times will we shrug and say, "It won't happen to me," until it does? Have you, or someone you love, ever bitten into something you regret? Did you find that killer bar in your freezer before the recall notice made headlines? Share your story, because once trust melts, what else do we have left to hold on to? Number 4. Breyers Rocky Road. You open the freezer expecting comfort, not combat. A pint of Breyers chocolate truffle sits there like an old friend whispering, "Go ahead, you've earned this." But on June 2nd, 2025, that whisper turned into a scream when Unilever, parent company of Breyers, issued a voluntary recall of 6,668 tubs. Why? Because some of those tubs, labeled chocolate truffle, were secretly filled with Rocky Road, a flavor brimming with almonds that were never disclosed on the tub itself. Sure, the lid said Rocky Road, but the carton shouted chocolate truffle, and only offered the vague cop-out of may contain tree nuts. That isn't labeling, that's Russian roulette dressed in chocolate swirls. For anyone allergic to almonds, that single scoop could slam the body into anaphylaxis faster than the brain can process a cold headache. The FDA listed it as a Class 2 recall, meaning the reaction might be medically reversible, a phrase that sounds like comfort but hides the reality of ambulance rides, swollen throats, and ER bills that swallow retirement savings whole. And let's remember, even though the recall was tied to one specific lot, how many families in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Ohio checked UPC codes before dessert? How many seniors can even read those microscopic numbers in the first place? This isn't just a labeling slip, it's an emotional ambush. Breyers has been around since the ice cream socials of your childhood, the brand that felt as steady as Main Street itself. Now it feels like that neighbor who borrows sugar, but returns it laced with arsenic. Working class families and retirees aren't allergen detectives. They're people who trust what's printed on the tub. They've been taught to believe the freezer aisle is safe, but one hidden almond, one mislabeled carton can turn treat night into a test of survival. Unlike Bluebell's massive multi-state fiasco or Rich's 110,000 case Listeria bomb, Breyers' slip slithers in quietly with just enough plausible deniability to sound minor. But that's the cruel part. It's betrayal delivered with subtlety, hidden in plain sight, the kind of danger that makes you second-guess even the most ordinary choices. And Breyers' response? No apology tour, no CEO with clasped hands on morning TV. They call it manufacturer transparency, which is corporate jargon for "we got caught, so here's a press release." So what can you do? Shake every Breyers tub in your freezer, check that lid against the carton, and squint at the lot codes like a detective with a magnifying glass. Or better yet, skip Breyers altogether. Ben & Jerry's has allergen disclosures you can actually trust, while Alden's Organic prints their ingredients like an open confession instead of a half-buried warning. And if you're tired of playing allergen bingo with corporations, you can take the plot twist home. Melt dark chocolate, stream stir in safe nuts or marshmallows you choose, pour into molds, and freeze, because your kitchen won't lie to you. But here's the deeper wound. How many more trusted brands are dangling undisclosed hazards in front of us? How many more family routines, grandchildren handed pints, retirees enjoying dessert on fixed incomes, are really trial runs for immune systems? At what point do we stop eating in blissful ignorance and start demanding that these companies treat our lives with more care than their quarterly profits? Number 5, Turkey Hill Fudge. You stroll into the supermarket looking for a simple win. You spot Turkey Hill chocolate marshmallow, that old reliable you've scooped since the 1980s, the kind that whispers safe, familiar, sweet. But on July 16, 2025, the FDA announced a recall that stripped away that illusion. Nearly 3,000 cartons of Turkey Hill chocolate marshmallow were actually stuffed with chocolate peanut butter cup, an entirely different flavor laced with peanuts, an allergen that was nowhere on the carton label. A pint that should have been harmless marshmallow fluff became a loaded weapon for anyone with peanut allergies, one of the deadliest food sensitivities in America. Think about how cruel this mix-up really is. The lid screamed chocolate peanut butter cup, but the carton body insisted chocolate marshmallow. Which one would you believe when you're shopping in a rush, eyes glazed from balancing rent, prescriptions, and groceries? Most retirees and working families don't double-check lids versus cartons like they're decoding spy messages. They grab what the label says, trust the brand they've known for decades, and move on. But in this case, a single scoop could swell the throat, stop the lungs, and trigger a frantic ambulance ride. For the nearly 3 million Americans living with peanut allergies, this isn't a harmless goof. It's a betrayal hiding in a swirl of chocolate. This wasn't some tiny corner store slip either. Those mislabeled cartons were distributed across Pennsylvania and neighboring states, where Turkey Hill has long branded itself as a local favorite. But let's be honest, local doesn't mean safe when the same company had a recall in 2022 for undeclared peanuts and mislabeled ice cream. That's a pattern, not a coincidence. And patterns mean danger for families who keep giving brands the benefit of the doubt. At what point does oops stop being an excuse and start being negligence dressed as tradition? The scariest part is how little protection stands between consumers and catastrophe. No fancy testing caught this mistake. No system flagged it. Just the unlucky chance that a consumer or distributor noticed the lid and carton didn't match. It feels like we're one distracted employee away from disaster every single time. And yet, Turkey Hill didn't face lawsuits or heavy fines. Just another polite, voluntary recall and an offer for refunds. Imagine your child nearly suffocates from peanuts, and the company's solution is handing you back $4.99. Does that feel like justice or like mockery? For retirees on fixed incomes and working parents stretching every paycheck, Turkey Hill feels like the affordable, comforting option. But that illusion of safety is what makes this betrayal sting sharper. Nobody buying a family-sized carton thinks they're playing detective, or worse, rolling dice with their immune system. And yet here we are, asking whether dessert is a comfort or a concealed weapon. So where do we turn? Some shoppers are eyeing brands like Strauss Family Creamery or Alden's Organic, which lay out allergens like open road signs instead of hiding them behind corporate fog. Others are pulling out old-fashioned churns or cheap home ice cream makers, because at least when you fold in your own chocolate or swirl your own marshmallows, you know peanuts won't sneak in uninvited. And while that may sound like extra work, ask yourself, which costs more, a Saturday making ice cream at home or a hospital bill that drains your Social Security check? But the question that lingers is more chilling. How many more recalls do we have to see before companies start treating labeling errors as life or death issues instead of clerical mistakes? How many more brands will gamble with the lives of allergic seniors and children just to keep production moving? And how long before one of these minor errors explodes into the next national tragedy? Number 6. Helados Milk Bomb. You head down the frozen aisle, cart rattling, and your eyes land on the bright boxes of La Michoacana and Helados Mexico paletas, the kind that scream childhood summers. Mango streaks glistening like slices of sunshine. You think cheap, simple, no tricks, here. But in July 2025, those very boxes were recalled nationwide, across all 50 states and Washington, D.C., because they contained undeclared milk, one of the most dangerous allergens, even though the packaging said nothing. That isn't a mistake. That's an edible ambush, hidden inside neon wrappers that winked at you with false comfort. What makes this sting so deeply is where these treats were sold. Not at boutique shops where people might second-guess the fancy packaging, but in Walmart and Dollar Tree freezers, places where retirees and working families stretch dollars until they squeak. For those living paycheck to paycheck, the dollar store price tag whispers safety. This won't hurt you. This won't drain your wallet. Yet a single bite could send a child or grandparent into anaphylaxis, fighting for air while the closest hospital may be 20 miles away. It's like being tricked into thinking you're buying a summer afternoon, when really you've purchased a ticket to the ER. Milk allergies don't get the headlines, but they affect around 2% of Americans. That's millions of people. For them, milk isn't some quirky digestive issue. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen. Families with milk-allergic kids literally keep epinephrine injectors by the freezer door, bracing for mistakes. But what defense can they mount when the carton itself lies? These weren't hidden gourmet flavors with exotic mixes. These were popsicles, for crying out loud. And yet the labels erase the very warning people's lives depended on. The cruelest irony is how this came to light. Regulators didn't catch it. Quality control didn't flag it. The recall happened only after a consumer got sick and forced the alarm. Imagine being that parent whispering in panic, "Honey, he's wheezing after a popsicle." It shouldn't take suffering for corporations to admit what's in their food, but that's exactly how our system operates. Pain first, accountability later, if ever. That's not food safety, that's Russian roulette with rainbow sprinkles. And what did Helados and La Michoacana offer in return? A bland notice. Don't eat it. Bring it back. No apology tour, no pledge of real reform, just a shrug dressed as corporate responsibility. For the very people who rely on cheap treats as one of their few small joys, that shrug feels like salt in the wound. It's as if corporations assume loyalty will outweigh fear, that consumers will forgive betrayal because, hey, it's just ice cream. But is it just ice cream when it risks a child's life? So how do you reclaim trust when even nostalgia is weaponized? Stop handing blind faith to mass-market bargain brands. Some shoppers are turning to Tillamook novelties or Alden's small batch sticks, where ingredients read like plain truth instead of legal fine. Print. Others trust their local mercados, where Hispanic families proudly label cow's milk up front, in Spanish and English, no tricks, no erasures. And for those tired of gambling altogether, there's the home freezer solution. Blend fruit purees with oat milk, pour into silicone molds, and make your own paletas. At least then, the only thing sneaking into your dessert is whatever you choose. Number 7. Wells Plastic Contam. Opening a pint of ice cream should feel like opening a small gift, not a lawsuit waiting to happen. But in April 2025, Wells Enterprises, the company behind names like Halo Top, Blue Bunny, Bomb Pop, and Blue Ribbon Classics, recalled more than 17,000 3-gallon tubs because of plastic contamination. We're not talking about vague allergen traces. We're talking about literal shards of plastic embedded in vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry swirls, sold in schools, food pantries, restaurants, and cafeterias nationwide. Picture that moment. You expect a creamy scoop, and instead you crunch down on a jagged fragment. A child's tooth chipped, a retiree's dentures cracked, or worse, someone swallowing a sharp sliver before realizing the danger. The FDA marked it a Class 2 recall, meaning serious injury was unlikely, but temporary or reversible harm was very possible. But tell that to a 7-year-old spitting blood after dessert. That's not comfort food, that's betrayal with sprinkles. What makes it sting is the irony. Halo Top sells itself as healthy indulgence. Bomb Pop carries the nostalgia of summer parades. Blue Bunny is middle America comfort. Blue Ribbon Classic stands for affordability and reliability. Yet behind the glossy lids, Wells let industrial scraps sneak in, turning freezer favorites into dental hazards. Instead of owning up loudly, the recall was quiet. No apology tour, no brand-saving transparency. Just a slip of paper buried under corporate press releases. So what's left for us? Stop trusting mega tubs meant for cafeterias and church socials. Safer bets are small batch pints from local creameries or even your own kitchen. Fruit puree, oat milk, silicone molds, and you control every ingredient. No shards, no roulette. The real question, how many more trusted tubs are hiding silent betrayals? At what point do we stop calling them brands and start calling them what they are? Factories gambling with our teeth, our throats, and our trust. When even sweet ice cream hides betrayal, what will you trust next? Subscribe now and join us demanding real food truth.
Thanks a lot for sticking with us to the very end. If you found this video useful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss any daily uploads. And now, go ahead and explore some of our top recommended videos popping up on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next one.